Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to paint some Pussy-willows, and I thought this would be a really fun tutorial because we'll do a little bit of kind of almost reverse painting. We're going to be doing our background and then lifting out the Pussy-willows. I've got a handmade block of watercolor paper that I made a couple years ago, and I only have a couple sheets left, so I thought this size would be fun because I can do like some long branches. And I'm going to start off by wetting my paper with just clear water. And this is an inexpensive paper. This is actually made from Fabriano Studio cold press, 140 pound. Or it might actually be the 90 pound. Actually, it's probably the 90 pound. I can't remember because it's kind of small. I tend to use the 90 pound papers for that. Got some little cat hairs in there. I think the cat's been on my desk. So you just give it a good wetting down. And while the paper is kind of absorbing that water, we're going to mix some color. And I've got my little Holbein palette here, which has all Holbein colors except for 2 Renaissance colors. I am going to take some burnt umber and some ultramarine blue and make a nice gray that will kind of separate a little bit, which I like. I like that granulation and separation those two colors have together. That's off my brush. This brush is really thirsty and absorbent, so it's going to put a lot of water into my mix. This these 2 full pans in the center is the Renaissance. So this palette came from Amazon with some really cheap paint in it. I think there's a similar set sold at Hobby Lobby. Anyway, I took all the palettes out and I put my Holbein colors directly into the wells because they're a little bit bigger that way without the half pans in there. So it's just easier to fit a bigger brush in. And then I realized I could put a whole row of full pans in there if I want and still have room to mix on the lid here. So there's an option for you if you're looking for something like that. I'm not sure if that's going to give me enough paint or not. Sometimes I'll mix with like a stiffer brush because it'll give me a stronger color. Let's give that a whirl. I think that's going to be fine. So once you start this, you're going to need to make sure that you have a paper towel ready because we're going to be doing lifting pretty immediately. You could, in fact, it might not be a bad idea to sketch on a branch before you begin. I didn't do that. I'm going to see if I can just kind of drop the rest of that paint in there because I don't want to waste it. And then I also like to flick on some of those colors, so I'm going to take some burnt umber, because this is a 1-inch brush I'm getting in there. That's a little bit too wet actually. So I'm going to tip it and let it give me some interesting backgrounds. This is a very simple technique. The paint technique is very simple, so I want my background to be kind of interesting. I'm going to go with a synthetic brush and grab some ultramarine. Grab some burnt sienna, burnt umber rather. And I think I'll go with some yellow ochre. I think that would be pretty in there too. I did not pre-spray my colors. I probably should have, but I find if you're using an artist quality paint, there's not really that much need to. If you're using like a Cotman or another student grade paint, it's probably a good idea. And I'm just going to kind of flip that. Whoops. My center pans are held in place with some poster putty. Just dump the excess on there. You want to have this darker than you think you want it, so that's why I'm going so crazy with the color, not wasting any of it. And these colors are going to granulate beautifully. And as long as you don't let any of the paper dry, you shouldn't have blooms and puddles. And this is one of those paintings where I'm not even sure what's going to be up and what's going to be down, how I'm going to, want to display it until after I'm all done. The places where you're going to want to worry about getting cauliflowers or blooms will probably be the edges, because that's where stuff will puddle, especially here where we're just about the end of a block of paper. I'm also going to grab some Sap Green. That's a color I love. In my Holbein 18 set I got off Amazon, didn't have that, so I did get some from the Renaissance tubes, and I just, you know, put that in the, that's what the other half pan is, and I'm going to flick some of that in there. Their Sap Green is super vibrant. You might prefer their olive green if this is too bright for you, because this is a little bit brighter than what I typically use for a sap, but it's pretty. Don't blot off any extra water until you're sure you are done, because you don't want to create any dry spots. I'm not watching the camera as I'm doing this, so hopefully we haven't gone out of focus at all. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that actually. I'm trying to get the paint to settle, not to settle on the edges. So when you're done and you're sure that you have, we're gonna in there, and you're sure you've got all the paint you want, then you can go in with a dry brush and just sop up the puddles on the edges. Otherwise you will have ruffled cauliflowers at the edges. Okay, so now you want a dry paper towel, and we're going to lift off our Pussy-willows. So I like to roll them up into, kind of roll my paper towel up into a little nub there. And I'm going to look at my branch for inspiration, and I want my painting, the Pussy-willows, my painting to be larger than what I have here. And you might notice that things can fill in. Like as, after you blotted it off, you might see, oh, that's filling in on me. And then you have to go back in and press a little bit more. Don't worry about a rough edge, because a rough edge is normal. So you may have to keep lifting. Look how bright white it goes though. Because these colors are sedimentary and granulating, you end up with this really pretty texture in the background, but it also lifts up really well. Wrapping it around your finger is also a really handy way to get the right size. Bigger is better, because then you get to make a little bit more impact. So this is going to be larger than life. I'm just going to do the one branch going through, I think. I can always lift up, like brush lift, if I decide that I want something bigger in the background. Now I'm also noticing I do have a bit of a puddle happening here. So I'm going to dry off my brush and just kind of gently sop it up. Ooh, getting some gorgeous texture. Love it. If I feel like a puddle might be starting to set, then you can blow on it and help scatter that without potentially leaving a mark with a brush. Okay, so another thing I want to do is for the little fuzzies on the Pussy-willows. This is just going to give us a little texture. I'm going to take my credit card scraper and just scrape a little bit to add some texture onto these. So if anything does bleed back into the fuzz, it's just going to give us that fuzzier look. I'm just very, very gentle scraping. You don't have to press hard. This is going to be our first layer of texture. and it's very subtle. You could even throw some salt in there if like maybe your colors didn't granulate as much and you wanted more texture. You could throw some salt in at this layer while it's really wet. Just make sure you leave it be and let it dry so that you'll get that nice effect. But if you're not using salt, I mean, you can go ahead and dry it with a heat tool. I'm just looking for any puddles. Either way, it doesn't really matter. But I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll come back when it is ready to paint our next layer. Okay, I let this dry naturally. I had some housework to do, and I did that while this was drying. And because I let it dry naturally, I got more gorgeous texture here, which I really liked. And I'm noticing like these little specks. And I'm not sure if that might have been a paper defect or if that's pigment or what, but I like it. So happy accident, love that. But look at that, this gorgeous texture there. Hopefully it's focusing in good and you can see it. But I think that's really pretty, and that's why I put so much paint down, because you need to put quite a bit down, and it has to be real evenly wet in order to get that. So you just want to make sure that you don't have any puddles before it dries, and you should have a really nice effect. So I'm going to mix up some nice dark color. I'm going to start off again. I'm going to use a burnt umber here. Actually, I'm thinking that I'm using a 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch dagger brush. I'm thinking, I'm looking at the actual branch. I'm thinking that I might actually just use the burnt umber and then go in with a little ultramarine blue. So I'm going to start thicker down here. The pussy willows are growing out, so the branch will be thicker towards the bottom and thin out. And I like this branch here, how it kind of separates here at the end, because I think that's kind of what I've got going on there, and I want to make sure that it looks natural. So I have a few different versions. These grow in the spring, and you kind of have to keep your eyes out for them because they go fast. They blossom, and these little buds turn into leaves. They get kind of these long, fluffy, like long, bushy, kind of fluffy tails on them. So you want to make sure that if you're going to pick some, that you pick them before they go by, because then they'll get fussy. They'll get fluffy. And don't put them in a vase of water. You want to put them in dry. So put them in like just a dry jar or something, so you don't end up with fuzzies. I'm gonna have to give this one another little branch too, because I put him a little too far off. I probably should have sketched on a branch first, but I don't know. I like to just kind of go with the flow with a project like this. Okay, now I'm going to take some ultramarine blue, add it in there, add it into the burnt umber that I had on my palette here, and I'm going to throw in a little bit of dark here and there. They have this kind of like little kernel next to the pussy willow. It's usually it can be on the outside of the little puff. I don't think it matters a heck of a lot. Kind of put it in however it makes sense. Use your artistic license. I don't know if I like having my pans in half pan so I can move them around a little bit, rather than having them in a stationary palette where, like my large studio palette, where I can't move them. So it's like, oh, now I feel like I need to use all this up and then put everything into a half pan. It's completely personal preference. The Holbein paints, I got these for a really good deal, but now they're so expensive. But they don't have, you know, you can use whatever paints that you want. Oh, that's a nice little, that technique makes a nice little bud where you just kind of, you're kind of using the dagger brush, you have the tip side down, and is my hand going to be in the way? I think I can move my hand like this so you can see it. So you got like kind of the tip side down, then you press it, and then you go up on the tip again. So it's like not how you typically use that brush, but it gives you a really pretty effect. So it's like just press and lift. That's pretty, I like that. And there'll be like little nodules on the branches, kind of where there would have been another one that kind of sprung forth if it had been left to grow on the tree a little bit more. I was glad to find one of these on my property by the road because the town had clipped a bunch of trees to get them away from the power lines, and I had a really big pussy willow tree, but it got trimmed down or completely cut down a couple of years ago, and so I'd been walking outside trying to find some, and I spotted this right in the corner because we have a corner lot. It's not big; it's only an acre. It's big enough. So I was really pleased to see that there was still a little tree there, because otherwise I'd have to knock on doors and ask if it was alright if I pick some stuff off their tree, and I don't know. I don't really want to do that. A little sap green there. I think that I'm going to add some color to the pussy willows themselves. I think I'll give it a real quick dry first, because I don't want, probably, you know, if you don't want to have to stop and dry, you could do the pussy willow parts first and then go and do the little husks, but I felt like I just wanted that bit of design down. Okay, let's start with, well actually let's start down here so we don't end up laying our hand in any wet paint. I'm going to start by wetting the pussy willow, and then I'm going to pick up this little bit of this gray, which is the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, and I'm just going to drop that in there, right in the center. And then I'm going to grab the credit card scraper and just do some little scratches. That seems a little dark. I'm going to clean my brush off. Just going to lift a little bit of that out. And go up here, add a little in. Holbein paint does not contain oxgall, so it is, it's not going to flow as much. I don't think I really like how dark those little scratches are, so I don't think I'm going to do that again, actually. If it ends up reaching out to the other scratches I put in there, that's fine. But I think it's too bold. I can also add in a little bit of Sap Green. Make it a little bit more gray because I feel like I am running out. Balance my colors there so it's gray and not brown. The Renaissance paint I think do have oxgall in them. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure they do, or a synthetic oxgall, they flow a little bit more. I really don't think the difference is huge, to tell you the truth. I mean, some people will say it's a huge difference, but I don't really find it to be that big of a difference. If you get a hard edge, just clean and wipe your brush off and just go in and soften it. Pre-wet a few at a time. Oops, I didn't pre-wet that one. Get a little bit of green in those. Sorry if I'm mumbling. we can also put a little bit of yellow ochre in some of these. That would warm things up and break them from the background a little bit. I just took a little yellow ochre, I just kind of blotted it off on my palette. I should probably do that down here where you can see it a little bit more. The silicone, this is my water media mat from Waffle Flower. Watercolor does, if you have it really thinned down, it doesn't want to beat up a little bit on you. Cleanup's easy, I just plop it in the sink, rinse it off. Alright, I think I just want to fuse some yellow ochre. I always say a few, but then I end up just going crazy. Okay, so another thing I think I want to do is add some dimension with some colored pencils. I'm just going to use my Prismacolor because they're always right at hand for me in my a little case on the side of my table. And use this kind of cream color or beige to get a little highlight on the branch. I felt like it didn't have enough definition. And those little kernels. The great thing about having something that you can actually pick up and look at is that you can pick it up and look at it. It's right there with you, right? So you can like look, it's like, oh yeah, there's some like kind of that beige color on the top of that kernel. You can really get in there and see it closely. And actually when I see that, that pencil looks almost white there. I'm going to need something that's a little bit more colored. Let's try this chameleon pen here, pencil. Not quite right. These are fun and all because they have two colors and I like that, but I really like the Prismacolors for being a little bit more opaque to go over stuff. So I'm just going to grab a few pencils here. They're getting down to be nubs though. I'm going to need to really, I bought a set of Prismacolors last year. They had gone on a wonderful price. The 150 set was down to like $59 and I snagged it up so I could replenish my stash as I ran out. But I actually haven't even gotten into it yet because I still have like nubs of everything, but it's getting to the point where the case that I have my pencils in, it's a spice rack turned on its side, and I can't, some of them have gotten so short that they're down in the recesses of the spice rack and I can't see them. So I really need to either come up with a new storage so I can see the little nubbins and use them all until they're nothing, or I don't know, or dig into that big stash and stop being such a cheapskate. Maybe a little bit of both. It's kind of crazy. It's like, geez, I bought them to use them and they're sitting in their case because I want to use up these first, but there's so many my favorite colors I can't get to because they've fallen down into the depths, into no man's land. What is this color? This is awful pretty. This is, let's see. Oh, it is called beige. How appropriate. Actually, I should probably have a little magnifier out because seeing the details on those, your eyes get tired after a while and it can be tricky. I like mixing colored pencil with my work. I feel like it just gives it nice warmth and richness. I guess richness is the right word. It makes it feel so much more solid, and I don't know, I just like the effect of it. I didn't always like the effect of colored pencil on my work, but I think it's because of how I had been trained to use a colored pencil with my work. And once I kind of went off on my own and figured out what I liked to use it for, I liked it much, much better. And that's why you should always like experiment and not just do what your instructor says if you're taking a lesson, you know, experiment with it and use your supplies the way it makes sense to you. Okay, so I am going to grab some white. I've recorded a live stream with that dandelion fluff tutorial, and I was bummed out because it was so pretty, but the quality of the live stream at that point, we couldn't get really fast internet where we are. It didn't process well, and it was so fuzzy, and it was odd because the people watching live didn't have a problem, but for whatever reason, the playback was awful, and I couldn't, you know, access. Oh, look how fluffy that is! I love that. I couldn't access the original. I'm gonna zoom in. Let me see if I can zoom in. I can zoom in a little bit. But it's the same technique as what we're doing here. So if you had watched that tutorial in the past and you had wished there was a better quality version of it, this is the same technique. It's just with the dandelion fluff, you know, the dandelion was a little bit bigger, but you can check that out. Now the nice thing about the colored pencil is that because it's opaque, any of those scratches, if they were too bold, I can soften them, and they add just such a really nice richness and layer to the painting. I think it just really gives it that extra dimension. I think this would be really fun. You know, you could put this in with like a wide mat in a skinny frame. I think it would just be kind of fun. Like, and there's a lot of little places you can hang a painting like that. I probably would put it upright maybe. I think I kind of like it upright. You know, you always have room for something like that because you can have it like next to a doorway or even on a cupboard. This one's still a little wet. Okay, is that in frame? Oh, good. I asked, like you can tell, like you can answer me, and I can hear it. I'm gonna dry that real quick because that's the one I dug into with the credit card scraper and regretted it. So it's taking a little longer to dry because I've scratched the surface and the sizing of the paper. So let's try that. I love a white color Prismacolor pencil. That's my favorite white color pencil. During used to have one called Signature. I don't know if it's still around or not, or I think it was called Signature. That was a really good one too. The downside of this sucker is that it likes to break. So, like, I'll show you here. I've got a little nubbin here and a pencil holder. I've got, you know, a lot of times I'll end up with both ends sharpened on a white one because, like, one end will just keep breaking. Just want to let you know the deal with those, but boy, they're so beautifully opaque and gorgeous. Now I'm going to look on my branches here and see what other colors I see. I do see a little bit of almost like a sap green, which I think would be really pretty to do in the pencil. Just got to find the right color green. That's probably this was one of my favorite colors, and I actually microwaved it because it kept breaking and it blistered the paint, but it did fix the lead inside. I microwaved it for like 10 seconds. I think it was the gold writing on these older style ones that caused that issue. You could also use like a heating pad. Put a little of this color in and it's like, oh, they're just about to pop. They're just about to go I don't know what you call it when they kind of get long and they're yellow and green and they have a little bit of pink on them. Well, anyway, it's up to you how much you want to put in there. Oh, that's not very dark. What color is that? That's called steel. I don't like that. It's not very dark. Let's see if we have a dark brown. Ooh, what's this? Tuscan red. I like that color. Let's see how it works on this. Oh, that's not too bad. A lot of times I like to use Tuscan red and indigo together for a nice rich shadow. Because I like my browns to be kind of lively. Hopefully you don't mind the addition of colored pencil here. You don't have to do it if you don't want it though. You can just you can layer on watercolors, you can leave it simpler. Indigo's a favorite, you can tell because it's in a little pencil holder. These were steel. These were 3 of these metal pencil holders for $3 from free shipping on Amazon. And I'm not sure where they came from, but they did not take long to get here. I was surprised. I figured they were going to be on the slow boat from China, but they really didn't take that long. Alright, so now I'm just going to look at the Pussy-willows one more time and see if I have the darks dark enough, because where they meet the branch, they are a little bit darker. I have to be careful if I'm going to add the dark, because I don't want to make, I want the buds there to stand out. I don't want them to just kind of, you know, I don't want them to fade in the background. So I'm using this, I'm going to use a cool gray 90% with a really light touch. And just do little fine strokes. I turn my pencil while I'm working so I don't have to sharpen it so often. The reason I don't want to just go with a lighter pencil is because it's going to build up so much wax, because it's going to have less pigment, more wax, and more white, and that's going to muddy things up. So that I'd rather stay with a more transparent pencil, which would be a darker color. So I hope that makes sense, because you might think, well, it's so light, why would you go in with such a dark color? And it's more about just using a lighter pressure and keeping that transparency and the luminosity. Because the lighter color, the more pastel a color is in colored pencil, the more white and wax it contains. Same with watercolor, really. You're better off to add water. So by just going really light here, it's like I'm adding water to it. Alright, and if I wanted to do something really bold, I could add a white pen to it. I don't know. I think that's pretty bright as it is. Although I could sign my name with a white pen. That might look nice. But I'll think about that and decide it, and then I'll put in a still picture so you can see what I ended up doing at the end. But there you have it. I hope you found this interesting and you give it a try. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.